I rarely return to those days, although time carefully folds them in my memory like yellowed letters in an envelope. The first flight, the first fear, the first friends whose voices still linger somewhere nearby, like an engine that has not quite cooled. I was 21, and the world had long stopped being peaceful. I was sent to a training unit in Lincolnshire. Fog there settled over the ground in thick layers, and it seemed as if the aircraft took off straight out of milk. My instructor, Captain Harrison, was a man who didn't waste words. He had already survived the first months of the war, seen comrades lost, seen rookies flare up in the sky like the most fragile stars. When he said, "Listen carefully," his voice sounded as if someone's life was hidden inside the phrase. My aircraft was an old tiger moth. The fabric on its wings had cracked like ancient parchment, yet there was something enchanting in its lightness. I checked the instruments, the wiring, the fittings, and my hands trembled not from the cold. A first solo flight was a line everyone crossed, but each remembered that step differently. When I sat in the cockpit, Harrison tapped the fuselage and said only, "Remember, it listens to you better than people do, but it forgives nothing." The takeoff happened almost automatically. My hands seemed to know everything on their own, though my chest felt as if my heart was trying to outrun the aircraft. When the wheels left the ground, something inside me broke loose, a mix of awe and fear. I saw the fields below, small as children's drawings, and the sky suddenly stretched into infinity. But along with it came a sense of fragility. One gust of wind, one wrong move, and you're just another dot in statistics. Fear doesn't arrive in the moment of danger. In danger, there is no room for thought, only instinct. The real fear comes when you understand that danger has become normal. I realized this a few weeks later when I moved on to the Hurricane. It was more powerful, faster, and for the first time, I felt like part of a living machine. During gunnery practice, my hands barely trembled, though my thoughts were heavier than lead. We knew we were being prepared for the fact that in real combat, everything ends in seconds. Many got used to that too quickly. My first combat sorties were with Lieutenant Reed. He was 3 years older, and those 3 years turned him into a veteran. Reed could joke at the most inappropriate moments, and his humor always saved us from the weight of the night. Before takeoff, he laughed, "If you get too nervous, remember one thing: the Germans are just as nervous." But even in his eyes lived a tiredness he could not hide. Our first encounter in the air happened over the channel. We were scrambled, and within minutes found a formation of bombers. Everything happened so fast I barely registered it. I only remember how the aircraft shook when I pressed the trigger. I remember the smell of gunpowder, though in the open sky, you shouldn't smell it, and I remember one of the Junkers losing speed and dropping down. Only later came the realization that there were men inside. At night, fear returned. That was when it had space to breathe. Lying in the barracks while wind howled outside, I felt it most. It whispered that tomorrow might be different, that tomorrow luck might fail. On those nights we spoke quietly, as if loud voices could break something fragile. Reed once said, "The important thing is remembering that we all want to go home." Even the ones we're sent to shoot down those words stayed with me. Losses came quickly, too quickly. One of the first was Miller, a quiet boy from Manchester who dreamed of becoming a teacher. His aircraft caught fire 5 miles from the airfield. The flames were visible even from the ground. We stood and watched it fall, and no one said a word. Later in the briefing room, Reed placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Get used to it or you'll lose your mind." But no one really gets used to it. We just learn to live with the sound of an empty bed in the barracks. A few months later, I had what the veterans called a second birth. We were returning from an escort mission when my engine began to lose power. I saw the ground rising too quickly. Instinct told me to pull up, but the aircraft no longer obeyed. When I realized these might be my last seconds, a strange calm washed over me. Barely brushing the tops of the trees, I brought the aircraft down on a field. I clipped the ground several times with a wingtip, but the fuselage held. When I climbed out, my legs shook as if I'd been standing on a bridge in a gale. After that flight, I understood that fear never disappears, but becomes a companion. It walks beside you like a shadow, and if you learn to listen to it, it sometimes helps. I saw experienced pilots avoid stupid mistakes precisely because they respected danger rather than tried to conquer it. Among us, there were many like Reed. He became my true friend, almost a brother. We shared silence and laughter, rare moments of rest, rare cigarettes, rare thoughts about the future. He said that after the war he wanted to open a garage and fix motorcycles. He said it with such certainty that it sounded like the war was already over. One day he didn't return. His hurricane was found 2 days later in a forest. I stared at the wreckage for a long time, and it seemed I could still hear his voice trying to make a joke. Going home happened suddenly. No triumph, no celebration, just an order signed at headquarters. When I rode the train across half of Europe, the windows reflected my face, and I understood I was different, not older, heavier, as if an invisible armor had appeared inside me, impossible to remove. When I opened the door of my childhood home, my mother froze for a moment, as if afraid I would vanish if she blinked. My father simply nodded, briefly but more meaningful than any words. I sat at the table, heard the sounds of dishes, smelled bread, and it was almost unbearable. Too simple, too peaceful, too far from the sky where so many friends remained. We rarely talk about it, those of us who returned, not because of pain, because words shrink the memories, make them too small. But sometimes when the evening wind brushes the windows, I hear again the engines hum, feel the trembling of the wings, see Reed smiling before takeoff. And then I'm almost back there, in the sky that took so much, but gave the most important thing, an understanding of life's value and the fragility of every moment.